Good morning, everyone, and welcome back for our fourth and final Morning Mind session of Brain Awareness Week. So far, we have talked about the different lobes of our brain, the temporal lobe, frontal lobe, occipital lobe, and parietal lobe. We also talked about the cells in our brain, called neurons, and how they're similar to mailmen, carrying messages from one part of the body to another. Yesterday, we switched gears a bit and we talked about our sensory systems, in particular our sense of smell and our sense of taste, and how there are receptors in our nose and in our tongue that sense our environment and send information about this to our brain through a chain of neurons. Now today, we are going to continue talking about our sensory systems, except we're going to dive into our sense of sight and our sense of hearing.
So, how do we hear things? Our friend calls out to us, and their voice travels through the air as sound waves and enter our ear. Once inside our ear, the sound waves bump into something called an eardrum. We like to think of the eardrum as a translator. It takes these sound waves that are flowing through the air that is not interpretable by the brain and turns it into a neural message that the brain can interpret and allow us to actually hear.
Now this message is sent through a chain of neurons to a region of the brain called the auditory cortex, which is located right here in our temporal lobe behind our ears. And the job of the auditory cortex is to tell us things like how loud was that noise, what was the pitch, how far away is that? And the auditory cortex then works together with other regions of our brain, like regions involved in language comprehension, so we can understand what we're hearing, and regions involved in speech production so that we can formulate a response.
Now, how do we see things? Things that we see enter our eye in the form of a light wave. These light waves travel through our eye and reach receptors in the back of our eyeball. Remember, we can think of receptors as baseball mitts. Just like baseball mitts catch a fly ball, our receptors are able to catch signals from the environment. So, if we're looking at board game die, there are receptors in the back of our eye that are able to catch the light waves that are emitted. Just like with sound, light is turned into a neural message that the brain can interpret.
And this message leaves the back of the eye in something called the optic nerve, where a nerve just represents a bundle of axons, that long highway of the neuron, that are all grouped together. Now, we learned about in our first Morning Mind session that the occipital lobe at the back of our head is important for vision. So this information has a long journey ahead.
On its way through the brain, some nerve fibers leaving the eye actually crisscross. This means that a message from our right eye goes through our eye to the right side of our brain, but it also crisscrosses to the left side. And this route can be shown here in red in the diagram. And similarly, images from our left eye go to the left side of our brain, but also crisscross and go to the right side of the brain. That's the route shown in blue.
You may be wondering, why does the brain do this? Why does it go through the effort of sending crisscrossing signals? And this is really important because it helps us focus on objects in front of us and be able to see them in 3 dimensions. It's also really important for estimating their depth, so how far away they are from us. If I want to grab a book from a bookshelf, it's really important that I know how far I need to reach. So our visual system is really important for hand-eye coordination as well.
After making the long travel through the brain, the neural message reaches its final destination, the occipital lobe, like we talked about in our first lecture, that's located in the back of the brain. Then the occipital lobe works together with other brain regions to allow us to interpret what we're actually seeing and perform some type of action as a result. For example, if we're playing a board game and we roll the die, the information about the number that we rolled will be sent to our occipital cortex. And then the occipital cortex has to share that information with other parts of our brain, such as our frontal lobe, so we're able to interpret if that roll was good or bad.
But sometimes our brain can be tricked by the things in our surroundings. In this famous example, if you look closely, you may see 2 white faces, but other times you may see a black face. And we call these optical illusions. So let's try one. In this example, which circle do you think is bigger? The blue one in option A or in option B? You might be tempted to say option B, but they're actually the same size. and we're a little bit thrown off by the green circles and the surroundings. In option A, the green circles are really small, so it makes the blue circles seem larger. But in option B, the green circles are really small, so the blue circle seems larger.
With that in mind, it's time for an activity. Let's see if we can trick our visual systems, just like we did in those optical illusions. So to do so, take out your experiment bag, grab the index cards, your crayons, a straw, and a piece of tape. If you weren't able to pick up an experiment bag, don't worry, you could be able to grab 2 pieces of paper, a straw or a pencil, and some tape, and that will work just fine.
All right, let's begin. We just learned about how our brain helps us see and hear things. So now let's see if we can trick our brain with an optical illusion.
Okay, first take out your 2 white index cards, and what you're going to do is draw a big cloud in the center of your index card. Color that in. Okay, just like that, you have a nice cloud. Now, on a separate index card, you're going to draw raindrops, but at the bottom of the index card, as if they can conceivably be coming from the cloud, but they're on a separate index card.
Perfect. Now we want you to grab your straw and take your 2 index cards and tape them to the straw. Make sure your pictures are facing outside.
Awesome. Now that that's all taped, it's time for the fun part. So you're going to take your new drawings, put it in between your hands, and spin it really fast. And you can see that it looks like the cloud is raining.
And this is because our visual system actually holds on to images for a fraction of a second. So when we see the cloud, our visual system holds on to it, but then we see the rain, our visual system is still holding on to the image of the cloud, so since we're spinning it so quickly, it actually looks like the cloud is raining, even though we know they're on 2 different cards.
Wow, that's really cool how we can trick our brain like that. So we just want to thank you for joining us for our morning mind sessions, and we had a lot of fun teaching you. Hope you had a lot of fun with these activities.
All right, happy Brain Awareness Week, everyone. Bye.